everybody. Good evening. Welcome to another edition, a week 4 edition of the Third and Leng podcast. And there's the handsome man himself right there, Matt Leng, sporting probably the only collared shirt he owns.
There you go.
Illinois shirt of all things. And we are both sporting the Illinois gear tonight. And well, we're doing that for a very special reason because we are welcoming in, well, boy, I don't even know how to begin to introduce this guy. This is former Metamora Hall of Fame head coach. Now, for some reason, retirement wasn't good enough for him. So now he had to go take another job, and now he's at the University of Illinois as the Director of Illinois High School Relations. Pat Ryan, it is so good to see you. Welcome aboard.
Likewise, Tim. Appreciate you guys. Glad to be here. Anytime you can talk about the game of football in the state of Illinois, it's a good day.
Well, I had mentioned before we started recording this that you are on a bye week, which I kind of joked. That means you're working probably even harder this week than you would a regular week. What I want to know right out of the box is, 30-year career at Metamora, high school Hall of Fame. Dude, you did everything. One state title. You've been to several state championship games. You've, coached thousands upon thousands of kids, sent hundreds and hundreds on to college. What made you retire and then turn around and get this opportunity in Illinois and take it? Because I'm just dying to know your mindset going into this, saying, hey, this is something I want to do.
I appreciate that question. Actually, how it all, I was kind of in limbo, and I was trying to figure out what next was going to be, and I actually was still involved with the State Football Coaches Association, and I was actually going to the next year's clinic planning meeting, and knew Coach B was going to be there. Knew of him, didn't know him, actually followed him into the meeting, and he sat down. First head coach I ever from Illinois I ever saw sat down, like not stand up, make a presentation, but actually sat down with the group, like looking everybody in the eye, and he started talking about the importance of building relationships with high school coaches. That perked everybody's interest, but then he started talking about a position that he wanted to create. That perked a lot of interest, and it certainly perked mine. And not to go into all the details, there was a position available, and I've had a long relationship with coaches in the state, and I value that a great deal. It's a great fraternity. And Coach B created a position that allowed me to basically be a conduit between the University of Illinois football program and Illinois high school football coaches. That's what got me out of retirement. Like it's a tremendous opportunity for me, and I'm very appreciative to have it.
Yeah. Matt?
Well, no, I mean, Coach, your record speaks for itself, and I'm sure you bring a lot of strengths and qualities to the Illinois program, and in all those years you were at Metamora, and now you're kind of in the college ranks. Like, if someone were to ask you, like from your experiences as all those years at Metamora and now at the University of Illinois, like, what makes a good high school football player? If you were to sit down and talk to a bunch of coaches or just players in general, like, how would you describe a good high school football player from your days of coaching and now you're in a different arena?
Well, that's a good question too. If you're asking me what makes a good high school player, what makes a guy a Power 5 guy, there might be two different things. Now there'll be some similarities. For example, we made our hay on guys that were not necessarily Power 5 guys that loved the game and were coachable and were willing to play together. Some of those same things I see at the Power 5 level at the University of Illinois right now. But it's all the characteristics of any football player, really, man. It's a different level, but love the game, play for one another. Talent helps. Obviously, you got to have some wow factor, and obviously, I didn't make great calls every Friday night, so I can guarantee you there's several guys that I would say they had that and bailed me out on many Friday nights. Good players make coaches look good. There's no question about it. But as far as there are a lot of factors.
As far as getting into the college side, and we talked about technology and how that is just completely overwhelmed and taken over the recruiting side of this. There's no doubt about it. How long did it take you to kind of get up to speed? And because let's face it, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to manage. It's changing constantly, as you all know. How long did that transition take you? Or are you still in that transition?
Absolutely still in the transition. When I got to University of Illinois, I mean, we had a Twitter account when I was a high school coach, but I wasn't directly involved in it. I knew what was going out. And I thank my good friend Terry Hawthorne, who was at my side at that time when I first got hired in Illinois, helping me with that. I've gotten better. I think I'm not treading water as much, but to say I'm swimming laps, that's probably not the case. But I'm comfortable with, you got to follow the Twitter world because there's so much in there. But as far as me tweet, I'm good for about 1 or 2 months with proper screening.
Awesome. Matt?
I was just going to say, Coach, I mean, in the time that you were at Metamora and you were kind of winding down and you saw all the social media, and now it's like everywhere. We have every type of platform and way to communicate. I mean, do you think that's good or bad? And, has that kind of maybe affected, like, I don't know, like college kids and high school kids? I mean, what's your take on that in terms of all the stuff that we have? These kids have, everybody has a platform and everybody has something to say. And what do you think?
I mean, Pat, to me, it can be overwhelming.
It's a lot of information for sure. I think there's a refined part of this or a filter, I guess. I think kids have to be, there's nothing wrong with putting yourself out there and letting people know what you want and watching your film and those kind of things, but don't let it captivate who you are and don't let it engulf too much of your time. I feel for these kids because they want to go on, they want to play college football, and promoting themselves is not bad as long as it's not too consuming. I mean, ultimately, guys, I'm always going to look at this. Yes, I know my role and I know who I'm working for, but I do see it from a high school coach's perspective. And I think it's difficult for the high school coach because there is a lot of information and the recruiting process for some is a little faster. And for some, it's a little slower. So I guess the best way to describe it is it's a good tool and it's not way, but it's important to have a harness. I guess that's probably the best way I would describe it.
And then, of course, you come in. Then all of a sudden, we have this thing called the transfer portal that fires up, which has completely changed recruiting as well. I've got to imagine a lot of your time dealing with high school coaches here in Illinois is trying to walk them through the process, especially how the process is these days. Pat, it's harder. I mean, the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, is it's harder now than it's ever been to get a scholarship at a Power 5 school like Illinois because of things such as the transfer portal. And how hard has that been to be able to have to walk coaches through that and say, look, it's not you, it's not your kids, it's just that field that was so narrow to begin with is even narrower now because of things such as the transfer portal.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that it's ever changing. I think the roster at 85 and not having the initials change some, but I'm still learning all about that. But I would say this: there's always going to be an important developmental process for us. But when it comes to those things, Tim, that's Coach B's arena. I got to be careful because there's so much for me to learn. I just think there are a lot of moving parts, but I do feel this recruiting high school kids in the state of Illinois is a big deal for the University of Illinois football program at this time.
Yeah, that's for sure. And one of the things and I know you and I had talked, and Matt, we've talked about, I thought how incredibly successful the IHSA Coaches Association clinic was this back in, what was it, January? I think January, early February.
February, March.
Yep.
just how successful it really was, and just rave reviews across the board. And I got to imagine that had to feel good for you and the rest of the staff at Illinois, because Pat, it wasn't always that way. It wasn't always that way where people were happy and excited to be there. But I really got that feeling and came away with the fact that, yeah, coaches were glad to be back. They were excited to be back. And you guys rolled out the red carpet and really made coaches feel welcome.
Well, thanks. It was a big deal. It was very important. I mean, I've been involved with a lot of those clinics over the years, and there's been some flow to it, some ups and downs. But, I mean, it all starts with Coach B. It was very important to him that the clinic was a big deal. We learned some things from this year, and we're going to grow. And honestly, Tim, you coming down was very important. I mean, we need the relationships around high school football in all directions. And we need to have those conversations. So the more we can get together, I think it's going to expand. I think it will get big. We at one time, that Illinois clinic was over 1,000. Now there are more clinics now than there used to be. So we'll deal with that. But to me, our clinic, our state association clinic at the University of Illinois is not only the getting together and the X's and O's, but it's a networking. So when we all pull together for football in the state of Illinois, it's a big deal for all of us, because we're all different in how what we're doing right now for football, but we have a common bond. And Coach B recognizes that. And anytime we can get people in the state of Illinois and groups together, talk about Illinois football and how we can make it better, that's a good thing.
Matt?
Hey, Coach, I just wanted to kind of go back to the transfer portal thing and just kind of ask you something. You've been around, high school, and now you're here and you see some of these things change as the transfer portal. I don't know, maybe kids want to change schools, or maybe they want more playing time or whatever. If someone were to come off the streets and to ask you, like, hey, Coach Ryan, like, have kids changed from the 1970s and 80s to now the 1990s and 2000s? I mean, how would you answer that question? Because we are in a different world, in a different era, with transfer portal and social media and all that. But do you think kids have changed?
I think the surroundings have changed. I honestly believe that kids still want to do the right thing. Kids will respond to discipline if they understand what it's about. I mean, tough love's a good thing. I mean, how do you make people better if you don't challenge them? Man, I mean, it's just, but is the world around them changed dramatically? 100%. We're in an era where my kids lap me with technology. Like, how many things my parents, there was nothing I knew more about my parents than they knew because they were older. Technology came in and kind of flipped that. But I still believe that kids want to be coached. They want to be challenged. They sometimes they need to know why. And I think that's the biggest change. But honestly, and I've noticed this with the college kids, they really are. They're older, but they're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Looking back at your Metamora days, and let's face it, you had a lot of Metamora days. They go way back. Go back to when you were in high school. So you spent an incredible amount of time in your life in Metamora. I mean, are there favorite memories? Are there just too many to really think about? If you think about your coaching career, are there any games in particular that just kind of jump out at you as ones that will always be memorable? I got to imagine the state title is one of them.
Well, without a doubt, but what you never have a chance when you're coaching because you're always thinking about what's next, and I think that's important. And I've talked to a lot of coaches around the state who are on the tail end of their career, and some that have retired, and you finally get a chance to look in the rearview mirror and say, realize how fortunate I was. I was at a school where football was a big deal. Now, it wasn't just football, but football had a chance to, people got behind it. And, some of those memories are subtle. Yes, state championships are great. There's no doubt about it. Those, and it was a journey too. I've talked to guys that when you get to that final weekend, you're having a good year, you're working with good kids, you're taking it as far as it will go. Yeah, you want to win it, and you should go in it with that plan. But I think there's some gratification in taking teams as far as they'll go. And my memories are countless. I just feel fortunate that I had the time that I had and was around so many good people, not only players but families.
I'll always remember to this day going to cover a playoff game in Metamora and pulling into town and thinking, this is Green Bay dressed in red. Seriously, that was the atmosphere around Metamora. How does that happen? How does that get created? I got to imagine, obviously, the town buying in, and because, I mean, let's face it, we both know how football crazy Metamora was back in those days. They absolutely loved that team and followed them year round, literally, it seemed like. But boy, you just had a complete buy-in, I think, from everyone. And Pat, it was a special atmosphere in Metamora come playoff time.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and you see this all over the state. Like, that's what makes it awesome for me. Now I can take a step back and watch this happen all through the state of Illinois. Just see how excited communities get, how excited school communities get when their football team's doing good. I had a dean of students one time that told me, he says, you know what, when football's going good at a school, it just makes the whole atmosphere better. And so to your point, this is what makes it so important throughout the state of Illinois, not only for the guys who want to play, because most of them don't. Most of them also putting signs up and excited, or again, they got farther than they've ever gotten in a long time, and just all that goes with high school football in the state of Illinois. Like, my role now is I can sit back and just cheer for everybody, and quite frankly, it's pretty fun.
Matt?
Well, if I can have a chance to talk, I would like to give Coach Ryan a compliment. And I've told him this story, and I have not told you this story, Edgy. But here's the deal, like from a young coach, when I was climbing up the ranks, and I was coaching at Ridgeview High School at the time with Coley Welder, living in North Normal. I can remember when Metamora was so hot. It was in the Pantograph, it was in the Peoria Journal-Star, and one of the best football environments that I've ever been involved was when Coach Ryan took his Metamora Redbirds, over to the likes of Pontiac to take on Coach Mick and Pontiac. And there were so many people there. I had told my wife at the time that I needed to get there 3 hours before the game started in order to have a seat. And I barely got there. And there was a band playing outside the gate, and the crowd was 5 blocks down the street. And to see the fellowship and the kind of the bonding between Mick and Pat after the game, in an absolutely grueling game, with just 5,000 to 6,000 people there. It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing to see how important and how powerful Metamora football was. And, that influenced me. That influenced me because I can remember seeing this figure in Pat Ryan at coaching clinics and watching him and listening to him, and then to see his team there and live and in person. I mean, when you say that's Green Bay high school football, you're hitting the nail on the head there, Tim, because what he did over there was amazing. Those games against Providence in the state championship game, I remember being on the outskirts of that stadium looking through Hancock Stadium. They had a tent over the stadium on the side gates, and everybody and their mom was rooting for Metamora. It was just amazing. And just to tip your hat off to you, Pat, because that was a special time and a special era for high school football.
Well, it's hard to, it all starts with the guys that suited up and played, and there were a lot of good ones, and the families that back you. The one thing that I think, and we talked, has things changed, whatever, but factor is if you stay at a place for a while, there's a chance for every coach makes decisions. I got a few I'd like to take back. There's a few fourth and fourth didn't get, and all those things. But for high school kids, it's about playing for your memories. And a guy from Metamora, John Vogelsang, who was an assistant when they won the state championship in 75. And then his son played for me in 96. He talked to the team one time about playing for your memories. And, it's true, for high school kids. And I hope we never lose that. Obviously, there's a bigger picture, and from the standpoint of getting a chance to get Illinois kids, and we have several that are having the chance to play at the University of Illinois is special. It completes the circle. But in the meantime, there's a lot of guys suit up for Friday night in a very short window. It's just a sport that the window is pretty small. So all those memories are great, and I appreciate you mentioning it. I just fortunate to be in that moment, like a lot of high school coaches are. I mean, it's just it's what it's all about, in small communities and getting people behind, because in small communities, here's the thing. The neighbors know they're either related or they live down the street from somebody, and that gets people excited. It gets them behind. And I'm seeing the same thing in Illinois. There's an excitement building. Like, people want the University of Illinois to be successful, and we're feeling it. So, I just feel fortunate on both ends of it.
All right, I got an easy one for you. You ready? Best player you ever coached in Metamora, who was it?
Best player? Boy, that's been talked about a lot. That's been talked about a lot. There's been a lot of good players. I could probably give you a dozen, but like impacting guys. And is it guys that have gone on and been successful? We've had some guys in the Big Ten. I'll tell you who the most interesting cat and probably the biggest guy in the biggest moment. You go to the state championship. Brennan Van Meegem was 100-pound kicker. Like, we lost 4 state championships. We were in a Donnybrook with Morris, and we had we had kids go on and play at a pretty high level at the college level off that team. And it all came down to this kid that if he was 110 pounds, guys, it was because he had his uniform on. And when if you remember that game, the time was getting away, and he was right at we had to call a timeout because we almost got to delay a game. So not only did we put the freshman in the spot, but we called timeout. Ice our own kicker, come on, Coach Ryan, let's get this squared away. And when I went out there, I know nothing about kicking. What I'm going to say, the game's tied. I just said, you know what, Brendan, I'm just going to tell you, it sure would be good if you make it. I think you can make it, and you know what you're doing, and that's about it. What was I going to say? Keep your head down. Hey, the wind's coming from the east, and he just drilled it. So, that's high school football, though. After all the slugfest, the getting there, and Morris was very physical in the battle, you send your littlest guy out there, and that's what makes football great. Honestly, it was a great moment. So maybe not the yes, there were more impacting players, but more impacting moments. I'd say he's got the crown on that one.
That's fair. So poor Joe Stam was probably hoping to hear his name, but no.
No doubt, great. And you know what? The thing about Joe is he's successful, whatever he does. The guy doesn't play a musical instrument until he gets out of high school, decides he wants to play a guitar, and now he's making a living. I got a couple guys like that. Really? Jake Mauer's doing that too. These guys but that's who they were. Like, if they set their mind to something, it was going to happen. And man, those are fun guys to coach, Tim.
Yeah, I bet. So from the recruit standpoint, who was the highest level recruit you coached in high school? You had a couple.
Well, we had some guys go on and play at the Big Ten. I mean, Caleb Turbush played at Purdue, and Brad Herman played at Iowa. I mean, we had some guys that went on and played, but for the most part, our guys were not Power 5 guys. They were just guys that liked to play on Friday nights. And Joe Stam was a great player. Unfortunately, got hurt, had the shoulder injury when he went to Northern. But boy, for a high school player, he could bail you out pretty fast.
Yeah, Matt.
Coach, I was going to ask you, did you have besides your great atmosphere as a Metamora, did you ever have some games on the road where, just some incredible atmospheres, and maybe some coaches that you really, after you think back on it, you really appreciated those coaching matchups, those strategic showdowns against a really good coach. So atmospheres over the years, and then maybe coaches where you really had to put your thinking cap on to beat them because you knew they were going to be well coached?
Well, there were several because, I knew I got asked one time by the Peoria Journal-Star, Bob Levitt, who was a writer for the high school for years. He said, "How do you think you're going to outcoach these guys?" And I said, "I don't know about that. We're going to have to outwork them." And I know a lot of these guys that I would mention are still coaching, so I probably can't mention.
Yeah.
But to your point, man, we went all over the state and really learned to appreciate what guys did. And I'll tell you this, some of the best guys I coach against maybe haven't won a state championship either. It's all about what's in the barn. And you knew there were certain guys that if you didn't bring your A game, but starting out, I will tell you this, because John Venturi is a retired coach from Washington. He was larger. He was it when I first started coaching. And guys like Rod Butler, Larry Lavery, guys that were in our area at that time, didn't necessarily coach against all of them, but learned to appreciate how to develop a program. And they were always willing to help you. And even though Washington Metamora has always been the rivalry, but John Venturi was a very kind person to me. Larry Lavery, who, at Central, Rod Butler, guys like that, they were it in our area, and they were more than willing to take a phone call at any time.
You mentioned your area, and it's always been, we've always heard for years and years and years, basketball. Peoria is a basketball town. It's a basketball area. You look at the success of what you had at Metamora, you look at the success of Washington and a lot of the other programs, and then recently Tim Thornton over at Peoria is starting to get that program turned around. Kind of underrated, Pat, a little bit as a football area?
Well, everybody's got a sense of pride in what they do. The teaching and the coaching at my time, you felt like it was at a high level, and there was a lot of mutual respect. You can say, there have been some state titles come out of our area, and no doubt that helps. But you know how those things are. All I know is in the years that I coached, I always felt like our area, that particular area was they had good programs.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Coach, I got a real quick question. Just kind of through the years, when you first started out, I compare you a little bit to Coach Ramsey down at St. T. When he was at A&M, he was predominantly a tight end, double wing, belly, option counter team, and you were sort of the same way at under center Metamora smash mouth football. Then for a while, you kind of got under the gun and you kind of started doing some different things out of the gun. Could you talk a little bit about that transition in terms of how football's changed a little bit, and how you made that transition and how that all kind of came about?
Well, to your point, the first year we went shotgun, I think we threw it about 4 times more than we did the year before. So I guess it was. I guess my answer partly would be it was gradual. But personnel had a little bit to do with it. And here's the thing. You can transition to anything you want, but you always got to be able to answer those hard questions. I think you have to be able to adjust with what you do. And we did some.
You got to be able to teach it too. So was
100%, because
transition and knowing how to do it and how to teach it. Because I think a lot of you. I don't know, from what I've seen, we've all been affected by that. Everybody in a lot of ways, there's a different way to skin a cat, but like a lot of spread teams are just spreading you out to run the ball down your throat. It's still power game principles. So, you got to know what you can teach and teach what you can coach. I just want to know that transition, how you kind of adjust.
A lot of the blocking schemes were the same. And when we started spreading it out a little bit, that was the thing. Your playbook, all I can tell you for sure is that the guys that do it the best, their playbook's not that thick. Now, it may seem like it's thick, but the really, really good ones, their playbook is not that thick. They will make you feel that way, but everything fits. And so we tried to do that. Towards the end, dabbled into RPOs a little bit. And the game of football is so awesome that way. Like when I first started coaching, the league that I coached in, 7 of the 9 weeks of our schedule, you were going to see and and then people gradually started doing different things. So to your point, I think it's good to look at change, but as long as you can hang your hat on certain things, to answer your question. I'm not sure I did a good job with that one, but the blocking schemes always to me was the most important. Like as long as I was good with the blocking schemes, where you move the other guys, it was the same.
Pat, are you doing this year by year? Are you even thinking about looking down the road at all? Are you just enjoying yourself now? Is there a plan, I guess is what I'm asking for you?
Well, right now I'm enjoying it, taking it all in. I think from first year to second year, there's a little more footing. I feel like there's some work for me to do. I am enjoying it. I like the culture of our building. Everybody talks about culture and that kind of thing, but when I walked into that building, I knew of Coach B, but I didn't know him personally. And just seeing how our building operates on a day-to-day basis, that's what's so special right now. Everybody's on the same plane. It doesn't matter if you're the assistant filmer. It doesn't matter if you're helping, you're the weight room staff. Everybody has a vibe. Like we all want the same thing. And to see that unified is really fun to be a small part of. Now I'm still the oldest guy, and my fashion's a little bit different than most people in the building, but that's okay. And Coach B, he always preaches be the best you. So Pat Ryan's right now just trying to be the best me in the building and keep up with what's going on day to day. But I'm enjoying it immensely, and I think not only Coach B, but ultimately everybody in the building has treated me well, and it's
Good.
fun right now.
Good. Matt, anything you want to wrap with?
Well, I got 2 questions. I mean, and I'll try to make them quick. When you're a high school football coach, this would be advice to all coaches. How would you establish a coaching staff back in the day? And from the time you started to the time you retired, what was your philosophy on creating a coaching staff?
Well, that's when here's the thing. When you first start as a young guy, and I was 27 when I started, you inherit your staff. So, and at that time there were some established coaches, not necessarily football only guys. So it was balancing that time. And then you have to coach your coaches as to what you want. I was lucky that, first of all, Tom Gunther, who was an assistant, who's a Hall of Fame coach, did not want to be a head coach. And we had a meeting right off the bat because I knew Tom would be very vital to our success. He said, "Well, Pat, I let's see where we're at in 3 years," and that was in 1990. And Tom walked off the field in 2007 with the state championship. He went out the right way. I mean, it was like a perfect ending. But I think what I learned is you can't have everybody the same. You got to have a little fiery. You got to have a little more analytical. But ultimately, you want to surround yourself with people that are loyal and that you can trust and also are willing to speak their mind. I think the biggest detriment was that when we started hiring guys that played for me, sometimes they wanted to say something, but, they were a little reluctant. And we finally had to hash that out. It's like, look, you want to see my ACT score? You want to say I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I'm trying to make this go. So help me, throw something out. If never be afraid to ask the head coach, why are we doing this? And if I couldn't answer, then I need to look myself in the mirror. So, and over time, you get everybody on the same page. I can remember my brother running scout team, and he was always trying to beat the varsity. And I kept getting mad at him, like, why are you running all these reverses? Like, we need to run what they're running. He goes, well, you've never told me that. So we scripted things. So it's an evolution, but I was lucky that I had coaches that cared about kids and were willing to do it the way that I wanted it done. and we just kind of worked through it as we went along.
And then my next question be, this is my last question, like, what would an old Pat Ryan, like a guy today, tell a new Pat Ryan if he started out in today's game? Like, what would you do different if you had to do it all different? Of all the things you've learned, if you were to start all over at 27, 28, would you do anything different? Would you approach things different? What did you learn? You know, I know if I approached it differently, there's just a lot of things.
That's a great question. Really, in fact, I've talked about that recently with other coaches. More is not always better. I would have spent more time on the recovery end instead of hurrying people off the practice field. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And I would have taken more time to do the recovery piece. I would have taken more time to realize, and particularly now, how important it is to help kids on the other end of this. You know, at Metamora, we didn't have a lot of big, schools coming in or anything like that, but helping them with a plan. Like, if you want to go on and play college football, let's look at the pieces of the puzzle. When I started, it was just more about getting a program started. You know what I'm saying? Now I would look back. And the other thing I've learned, and this is from Coach B, who honestly has been the best football coach I've ever been around in my life. Everything is purposeful. Don't waste time. Like, did I go back? Did we do drills just because we did them all the time? Like, well, this is a drill I learned, and this is why'd we do it? With him, like, everything that we do at Illinois, you just see it. There's a purpose for it. It's not like, well, let's just check the box. He's not a box checker. So I would go back from that standpoint, and probably would have had to embrace social media a little bit more. But the game is still, for a high school kid, it's all about working together, sacrificing a little bit of yourself, and all these things that people say, okay, whatever. But it's significant. And when guys put it on the line for themselves and they know it and they can look each other in the eye, Matt, honestly, nobody ever forgets that. And I don't care if it's high school or the college level. And that's what I feel like I'm a part of now. Guys are accountable to one another. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when the team goes out there and the guys are in the uniforms, when they can look each other in the eye, that's when you got something.
Yeah.
Awesome. Pat, again, couldn't thank you enough for taking time to join us. I know Matt and I were very excited to have you on. And again, I'm glad your social calendar obviously is very empty. We're grateful for.
Well, I will
wife.
Always make time for you guys. How about that?
You mentioned your wife. I still don't know why she's married to you. I think we all wonder that. I mean, I wonder why mine's still married to me. No idea, but God bless you for that.
You're very intuitive, Tim. That's why you've been able to do this for a long time.
Well,
did people, when you got married there, Coach Ryan, did people have to go to Ticketmaster to get tickets? Was it just like, was it a hot ticket because they couldn't believe it was going to happen? I mean, holy cow.
Well, I will tell you this. I can remember my father-in-law in tears walking my bride-to-be down the aisle, and I'm seeing him. And this was a guy that he was very stoic, wonderful man, one of the dearest guys I've ever met in my life. But as he's crying, as he's bringing her down the aisle, I'm thinking, is he crying because she's getting married, or is he crying because she's getting married?
Oh, that's funny.
Questions never been answered. We'll just leave it at that.
All right, I'll share this one with you. So the night of our wedding rehearsal, my father-in-law, God rest his soul, again, terrific man. All of a sudden, I'm standing up near the altar, and they're going through the procession and just how it's going to go. And all of a sudden, my father-in-law is at the back of the church with my soon-to-be wife, grabs her, and they sprint up the aisle. And I'm thinking, all right, he must really want to get her married off. What am I getting into? Well, almost 30 years later, I guess he knew better than all of us. So
awesome.
My friend, best of luck. We're behind you. Hell, the whole damn state of Illinois is behind you. Let's
appreciate it. It's going to mean the world, and we can feel it. A lot of work to be done, but I'm just I'm I'm very excited to be a very, very small part of what's going on down there. But I guarantee you it's good stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, hey,
Thanks a lot, Coach. We really appreciate it.
Coach, and we'll talk to you soon. Good luck.
Hope so. Pleasure. You guys appreciate what you're doing, and high school football in Illinois is in a good spot, and we're just going to keep building on it.
Yep, you bet. All right. Pat Ryan joining us, Matt, and again, that was fun.
It was a good time.
That was awesome.
He's had a big impact on my career, and because he's been friendly, he's been cordial, he's reached out to me, he's done things for me, and he's just been kind of a guy that's just wonderful.
And I tell this story all the time that I basically just started following Metamora and learning about the program and how great that program was and that town was, and they had terrific fans. And it all goes back to my free message board, and those fans were all over my message board, and they were all talking Metamora. That's what dragged me down there to say, hey, you got to come check this out. This is something else. And it lived up to everything it was talked about. Those fans are rabid. They were great fans, Matt. They knew every team. They knew every kid that was coming into town that they were playing in the playoffs. And again, for a guy like Pat Ryan, some knucklehead up near Chicago, coming down here to watch his team in Central Illinois, he didn't know me. He didn't know me at all. But that's the kind of person he is, where he's just very genuine, very out front and outgoing. And hey, he just, he trusted you, and you trusted him, and just a great guy and a great relationship. So again, just absolutely thrilled to call him a friend, and just great to see he's still involved and still around the game.
Well, and just again, I think when it initially happened that Coach B, hired him, I mean, it was
a no-brainer.
It was a stroke of genius. It was
no-brainer.
I mean, and I was there. I was there in that meeting that Coach Ryan is talking about when Coach Bielema showed up and just sat down there and said, "Hey, what do you need me to do? What do you want me to do?" And he stayed there not for 20 minutes, but for a good 45 minutes to an hour. And then the next thing you know, I mean, he plucks Pat Ryan out of our our coaches association, says, "I need you to be our guy," and just a great move, a great move to do things.
And the difference is with a guy like Pat Ryan versus a lot of other colleges that hire that position, he's walked the walk and he's talked the talk. I mean, he gets respect from every coach in the state of Illinois for what he's done over his career. And you can't hire a 20-some-year-old in that spot and to get the same kind of respect and attention that someone of a Pat Ryan's resume is going to get. And to me, that's why it was such a no-brainer.
Yeah, just a great person, great guy, and just has a very good rapport and connectiveness, with coaches and people. I mean, I'm a young guy. I'm a young coach at Fisher, and he's kind of helping me and giving me suggestions. And
he didn't need to do that.
No, he did not. He did not have to return. He did not have to return my email. I can remember seeing him in the old Chancellor Hotel there on the top of the hill there by, where we have the coaching clinic at now. It's now the Hilton Garden. It used to be the old Chancellor. And I can see him sitting there at the top of the stairs around a table talking about whether teams should play a 52 stack monster to a 4-4. And then, later on seeing him over there with the 1,200 coaches over there on the fields in the late 90s. And now he was a part of our association. He used to be a president. And now he's climbed the ranks, and he deserves everything. Coach Bielema in a Power 5 conference in the Big Ten is not going to hire just some Joe Schmo off the street. You're going to have someone that's worth it, and he's earned it. Pat Ryan's earned it. He's a true Hall of Famer. Yeah,
no doubt about it. All right, pal. I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Next week we'll be back. We will kind of take a look. We'll be at almost at the midpoint season of the regular season. So we'll start digging a little bit 4A through 1A, and also look at 8-man and try to get a better handle and an idea where things are going. Obviously, we'll have a much better idea about some teams.
Once you get into week 4 and you're aiming towards week 5, you kind of have an idea of what's kind of trying to transpire, and we'll have some more storylines on some players and some coaches and some programs.
You've gotten a few weeks of conference play under your belt, and you start to get a pretty good handle how things are going to shake out. So.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, my friends. So for Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks for joining us for a very special edition of Third and Leng. And again, just have a good week. Go out, watch a game, and we'll talk to you.